Katharina. My name is Katharina. I'm the president of the CALA Asia Pacific chapter. Warmly welcome to all of you today to attend our first keynote session in 2025. Allow me to introduce a quick introduction about CALA. The CALA Asia Pacific chapter hopes to deepen CALA members and various chapters in US and Canada partnership with librarians and libraries. So the Asia Pacific chapter is our key vision is to help promote membership in CALA in this region by acquiring Asia Pacific librarians with CALA ideas, purposes, and objectives. This group of CALA Asia Pacific chapter is informed by a group of Asian Pacific librarians, which we have the passion to bring all of us in the world to learn about the dynamic of the library industry today. And today, I'm very honored to invite a friend and a famous and dynamic keynote speaker, Dr. Sandy Hirsh. Sandy has been a friend and also Associate Dean of Academics in the College and Information, Data and Society, and Special Advisor to the Provost on AI Circular Initiative at San Jose State University. Without further ado, I'm going to pass this to Sandy, where she will do a self-introduction and also her exciting topic that she's going to go through with you on the Library 2035. Sandy.
Thank you so much for that really wonderful introduction and also for the invitation to speak to this community today. I'm really delighted to be here, and I think you did a great introduction. As you heard, I am the Associate Dean at San Jose State University and also serving as Special Advisor to the Provost on AI Curricular Initiatives. I've been at San Jose State now for 15 years. Spent 10 years as the director of the School of Information at San Jose State before moving into the Associate Dean role. And prior to that, I worked in Silicon Valley at big companies like HP Labs and Microsoft and LinkedIn. But my heart is really with being in higher education and having the opportunity to work with students and faculty and our field to move it forward. So that's what I'll be talking about today. I published a book called Library 2035, Imagining the Next Generation of Libraries in March 2024. And this book provides glimpses into potential futures for the field of library and information science. And in today's presentation, I'm going to explore some of the forces that are reshaping libraries, from AI and immersive technology to shifting spaces and deepening community roles. And also be talking a little bit about competencies that library professionals need to lead through this time of transformation. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and talk a little bit more about the book and what got me started with all of this. So Library 2035 actually builds on an earlier work that was called Library 2020. Today's leading visionaries describe tomorrow's library, that was edited by Joe Janes and was published in 2013. And it also examined the future of libraries all up to the year 2020. But in this new book, Library 2035, I invited 29 prominent thought leaders from the United States in the field to contribute their insights and offer just a very diverse array of perspectives that were spread across 25 chapters. And in addition to the book itself, I also conducted 23 webcast interviews with the authors that also add more deeper insights into the main themes of the chapters and their visions. of the Library of the Future. And I have a link to that at the end of the presentation if you're interested. They're on YouTube and free. But since the release of the original book, Library 2020, as I think we've all experienced, the world has changed significantly over just even the past few years. So in thinking about the future, I think it's first essential that we reflect a little on the insights that we've gained over the past decade and reassess our expectations of what libraries might look like by the year 2035. So when we reflect on the past, I think there's at least two themes that emerge. One is around adaptability, and the other is around community alignment. The first one, in the last decade, we've seen that libraries have been faced with unprecedented challenges, demanding both their flexibility and their resilience. Two great examples of these, of that is the global pandemic and also what we're experiencing now around the rapid acceleration of artificial intelligence. So when we look at even just these two major impacts, we've seen how essential it is to plan for the unexpected and how to remain flexible. We have to really foster a culture of continuous learning and innovation. The second was that we must stay deeply connected to our communities, that we need to be listening, evolving, and staying relevant to their changing needs. And equally vital for that lesson is that libraries must continually align their services with the evolving needs of their communities. And in doing so, libraries will solidify their indispensable roles as central information hubs and critical support systems, especially during times of crisis. And these lessons highlight the urgent need for libraries to develop the agility, foresight, and change capacity that's necessary to navigate disruption and to co-create futures with their communities. So I asked each of the book contributors this one question, and that was, I asked them to complete the sentence, the library in 2035 will be, must not be, will not be, can't be, and let them answer that question any way that they wanted. So that was the only prompt that they received when I invited them to contribute to the book, and then they took it from there. So as I'm talking through some of the observations that I've identified and some of the trends, maybe you want to think right now and think, how would you answer this question if I had invited you to write to this book? Just give some thought to that as I continue talking and see how well you match up to what some of the people in the book said. So why do we think about the future, and why is it important for us to be engaging in some of these futures thinking? IFLA updated their 2024 trends report, and they said libraries should feel both confident and able to look into the future, take steps to maximize their readiness for it, and indeed to shape it in line with their values and mission. So really thinking about the future is more than about a prediction. It's more about shaping the future the way that we want it to be. So before we dive into some of the key themes, I'd like to start by sharing some of the common overarching themes that surface just across the book. And across the book, these themes included, these themes that emerged in some way create a roadmap for libraries for the future, because they outline some of the important aspects that are directions that we need to follow. And they were around community and engagement, collaboration and partnerships, inclusivity and equity, privacy and security, technology integration, advocacy and futures thinking, as well as capacity for change. And you'll see that these themes will come up as I talk through the different parts of the book, and but I wanted to surface them up front. So the chapters for the book were divided into 6 different parts. One was focused on landscape, one was community, one on equity and inclusion, another on organizations, and one on library workers, and the last part on vision. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look more closely at each part of the book, starting with the evolving landscape for our profession, and I'll discuss how some of the themes I just mentioned emerge throughout the book. So in part one of Library 2035, the authors identified key themes that are actively transforming, not just shaping the library landscape. First, technological advances are poised to revolutionize libraries. Innovations like artificial intelligence, chatbots, and virtual and augmented reality are transforming how we manage and disseminate information and create immersive and personalized learning environments. Second, environmental considerations are important. Libraries are going to be leading in adopting green technologies and sustainable practices, solidifying their roles as vital community anchors and safe havens in this increasingly complex world. Third, the ever-shifting economic and political landscape demands that we're adaptable and that our libraries are adaptable. As job security shifts and the cost of living continues to rise, libraries will need to stay flexible, finding new ways to support their communities through economic ups and downs. On the political front, we're seeing lots of changing environmental and lots of changing government priorities, for example, in the United States, for example, with tariffs and trade disputes that affect everything from funding to access to global information. Libraries are going to have to navigate this tricky terrain and speak up for consistent support and make sure that everyone can still get the information that they need. And then fourth, when we're thinking about the current landscape and envisioning the future, the imperatives of privacy and protecting user rights can't be overstated. Libraries will champion intellectual freedom in implementing and adapting strategies to ensure secure and private access to information for all users. And finally, and some might say most importantly, we need to recognize the power of storytelling. As Chris Brown, one of the contributors to the book, reminds us, libraries need to craft compelling narratives to articulate their value and their impact, ensuring that their enduring relevance in years to come. This quote is from one of the contributors in the book, Erin Berman, who is the author of Chapter 4, Teetering on the Edge of Trust Cliff. And she highlights the role that libraries have in protecting the library landscape. She said, now is the time to fight for updated privacy laws. Now is the time to push back on vendor products that violate privacy. Now is the time to stand up for our users from less privileged situations who desperately need libraries to be a privacy safe haven. The second part in the book was focused around community, and it highlights the vital role of libraries in building strong communities. The library in 2035 has presented a vision of central hubs for connection, where community members are active co-creators of library programs and library services. By embracing this idea of co-creating, libraries will become powerful forces for social cohesion and enrichment, and will truly reflect the needs of their user community. And so within this vision, we're moving more from serving communities to serving with communities. For example, the vision emphasizes the importance of actively involving community members in the development of library programs and services. So as we move toward Library 2035, this emphasis on community engagement and co-creation will empower libraries to become dynamic centers of connection and foster social cohesion and enrich the lives of their user communities. Patty Wong, who was the author of Chapter 8, The Library as Community Enthusiast, Champion, and Advocate, she summarized the need for us to always be willing to adapt, evolve, and respond to the changing needs of our community, bringing their ideas into the conversation of what the future of libraries holds. And from her webcast interview, she said, "We need to be agile and nimble and forward thinking. We need to have that sense of appreciative inquiry where we continue to learn as an organization to bring ideas together and holistically approach the changing needs of our community." In part 3, equity and inclusion, the focus is on how libraries lead the charge in creating inclusive, accessible spaces while also advancing social justice. The contributing authors to this section outlined crucial strategies to make libraries more welcoming and make sure they're welcoming for everyone, with an emphasis on cultural competence and community-centered services. As we move toward the future, libraries need to be actively working to remove barriers to access, particularly for marginalized communities. And they need to adapt to these shifts by embracing technology and developing policies that prioritize equity and inclusion. And they also need to be advocating for social change and amplifying underrepresented voices. And they also need to be building inclusive policies through co-creation and collaboration with communities to ensure equity is deeply embedded in library practices. They need to be building trust, fostering empathy, and avoiding cultural objectification. So libraries, universities, and accreditation agencies in the United States are grappling with some of these shifting government policies that I mentioned that are complicating some of these efforts. Changes in funding, educational standards, and institutional expectations require ongoing adaptation to uphold the core values of equity and inclusion. So as the landscape of information continues to evolve, libraries will need to find their way to remain steadfast in ensuring that inclusion is not just an aspiration, but is a lasting reality. Alexia Hudson Ward, who was the author of Chapter 13, Open, Inclusive, and Diverse, the Academic Library of 2035, she summed up Part 3 nicely by stating in her webcast interview, "I see our future as being remarkably dynamic, remarkably complex, remarkably interesting, remarkably diverse, but definitely situated within the context of a more inclusive structure that takes into consideration the evolutionary changes that are happening, not just within the United States, but throughout the world." Now, if we take a look at part 4, which was focused on organizations, this part offers a glimpse into the evolving roles of public libraries, academic, school libraries, and community college libraries. But when we look across all the libraries, what we see is that libraries of all types are transforming through continuing to provide reimagined physical and digital spaces that are inclusive, welcoming, and adaptive to the changing societal demands. We're also seeing that libraries are establishing cross-sector partnerships, such as with schools or with businesses or with health departments or with their Parks and Recs department or agencies, so that libraries can partner and expand the library's relevance to their communities. And collaborating with community leaders and policymakers is important to provide diverse collection and services. And these collaborations will be very important and will be key to expanding services, and it will be key to enriching programs and meeting some of the broader needs of our communities. Libraries will have a harder time acting alone. They need to work in partnership and collaboration. And then libraries are also transforming by integrating AI mindfully and innovatively. As libraries integrate AI into their services, collaborative efforts will be essential to ensure that technological innovations enhance rather than compromise the inclusivity and community focus of library services. This emphasis on expanding library services through community engagement and partnerships is emphasized by Kelvin Watson, who is the author of Chapter 15, which was called The Future of Libraries, adapting our mission in our buildings to demographic growth and change. And he said, look what our libraries have become. We're no longer book warehouses, but we are a community center, a community space that encompasses all the partnerships from right outside the library. Now looking at part 5, the key themes from part 5, which was focused around library workers, we see that this part emphasizes the critical role that staff play in the success of libraries and how investing in their growth is essential to the future of the profession. And 2 key themes emerge from this section: the importance of professional development and wellness, and the role of advocacy and leadership. The future of libraries will be defined by change, as we've been talking about. And so consequently, staff will need to be trained and competent and empowered to lead and adapt through change, not just react to it. And by investing in library staff professional development and equipping them to lead and advocate, libraries will be well positioned to meet the demands of an increasingly complex world. Loida Garcia-Fibo, author of Chapter 20, Wellness for Librarians, Innovative Solutions to Foster Transformation, emphasizes how wellness is both the responsibility of the individual and also of the organization. And she talked about this in her accompanying webcast. She said, I will stress the importance of advocating for ourselves, but also for our staff, to support working environments that we deserve, that everybody deserves. We need to read, connect with others, and keep yourself to be a self-advocate or join forces with others, because there's strength in numbers. And then finally, in part 6, vision, here is where we imagine the Library of 2035 driven by strategic foresight and proactive planning. To anticipate future challenges and opportunities, libraries need to stay ahead of emerging trends in technology, evolving information needs, and societal shifts. They need to design future-ready services and spaces that are adaptable to the rapidly changing environment, ensuring relevance and responsiveness. And they also need to prioritize sustainability when designing new spaces and services. Another key theme is the necessity for resilience and adaptability. And libraries in the future will be flexible and respond quickly to changes in technology and societal needs. They will be building resilient infrastructures that withstand disruptions and social shifts while remaining agile enough to evolve. And they will also continue to be indispensable to their communities, serving not just as hubs of knowledge, but also models of sustainable and adaptable institutions in an ever-changing world. So libraries will remain vital when they're flexible and values-driven and deeply connected to their communities. So what does it take to not just adapt, but to drive transformation in libraries? I'm going to now talk about some of the core competencies that we will need to, then that will be important for defining effective library leadership in this world of accelerating change. It's no surprise that the integration of technology will be a critical competency for the future of library services. Future-ready leaders will need to harness AI and digital platforms ethically. Artificial intelligence tools such as ChatGPT enable patrons to quickly and efficiently find the resources that they need. Library leaders also need to build user-centered tools and like virtual assistants. These advanced tools like natural language processing are making information retrieval more intuitive and user-friendly, and are transforming the way that our users interact with information services. Our future-ready leaders must also understand emerging technologies. In addition to being aware of how to use emerging technologies across various applications, libraries will also need to be able to lead conversations about new technology and their various roles, risks, and applications. But one important thing that the contributors generally agreed on was that this technology will augment and not replace librarian expertise. Um, and that we also need to lead digital transformation efforts that align technology with our mission and values. So the goal for technology integration as we lead into the Library 2035 is ethical, efficient, and human-centered service. The future-ready professionals will not just serve their communities, but as we've talked about in this presentation already, they will co-create transformation alongside them. So strong leadership will mean creating participatory spaces, engaging our communities in service design and delivery. It also means creating services that reflect the community's needs and desires, and building trust and ownership through active participation, as well as supporting community-driven information sessions and workshops, and co-leading change with community input, building feedback loops for iterative service design. By fostering meaningful connections and conversations, library leaders demonstrate the skills needed to guide their communities through change. And this approach requires vision, adaptability, and the ability to build inclusive spaces that respond to evolving needs, key traits of effective leadership in today's dynamic environment. Leadership also means looking outward. I mentioned that before. It's going to be hard for libraries to stand alone. We need to work in collaboration with others. So as transformation accelerates, partnerships are going to be essential, not optional for success. By partnering and collaborating with schools, local governments, and nonprofit organizations, libraries will broaden their impact, making their services not only more accessible, but also more relevant to the people that they serve. Looking ahead to Library 2035, we should seek even stronger partnerships between libraries, vendors, academic institutions, and community organizations as a way to tailor library services that are relevant and desired by the diverse members of their community. And collaborative leadership skills will be essential for library leaders in order to ensure relevance and resilience for the library in 2035 and demonstrate library value to the community and key stakeholders. Strong leadership in the evolving library landscape requires a deep commitment to advocacy and futures thinking, two essential skills outlined in Library 2035. Effective leaders understand that advocacy has become a strategic imperative. They build influential relationships with stakeholders. They communicate the value of libraries with clarity and passion, and they leverage both data and personal narratives to champion the mission of their institutions. Great leaders don't wait to be noticed. They advocate consistently and intentionally. Equally vital is the skill of foresight and futures thinking. Forward-thinking leaders actively scan the horizon for emerging trends and evolving community needs. They don't just react to change, they anticipate it. This foresight allows them to position their libraries at the forefront of innovation, crafting services and strategies that are resilient, relevant, and ready for the challenges of tomorrow. So future thinking helps libraries move from reactive to proactive. It's not about guessing the future, it's about designing it based on our values and strategic foresight. So to be transformative change agents, library professionals need to develop change management expertise. Specifically, they need to be able to navigate organizational, technological, and cultural change with skill and empathy. They also need to become resilient and adaptable. In other words, they must thrive amid disruption through intentional reflection and recalibration. They must also develop strategic foresight, using trend analysis and scenario planning to guide decision-making. And they must foster community-centered innovation, ensuring services evolve with those we serve. And we must develop digital fluency, meaning that they have the ability to leverage AI, data, and emerging tools ethically and creatively. And they must empower their staff, which means they foster cultures of growth and psychological safety and co-leadership. And they must lead through values-driven decision-making. This means anchoring transformation in equity, sustainability, and privacy. So as we begin to wrap up, I'd like you to consider the following question. How would you define the library of the future in just 6 words? So like you to, if we could take a minute, if you just put in the chat your 6 words, what do you think, how would you define the future of libraries in 6 words or less? Just take a minute, and it'd be great if you could put those in the chat. Let's see if people are doing it. This is while you're thinking, I'll just keep talking. What I did was when I interviewed the book contributors for the webcast interviews, this was a question that I asked them as well. I said, I challenged them with that same question. What are your 6 words? Okay, I'm gonna let you think about it. I can see that that we haven't gotten there yet, but I'm very interested in. Maybe we can share it also in the Q&A session. But I thought I'll share with you a few of the ones that are my book contributors came up with. So one of them was, so Patty Wong said, community engaged advocate, no wrong door. David Lenke said community-centered facilitation for good. And Jason Griffey said, fundamental for a healthy, functional society. And Lynn Conaway said, relationship building, collaboration, community-focused, and adaptability. And Aaron Berman said, engaged, community responsive centers of democracy. And Joel Nichols said, change always comes. Prepare, not repair. And Kelvin Watson said, powerful partners, powerful places, powerful people. And Rebecca Smith Aldrich said, the future is unwritten for libraries. So I think these statements are valuable and offer kind of interesting perspectives as we collectively envision the future of our field. So maybe we can use that as a little bit of a springboard for our discussion during the question and answer section and consider how they might inform our own pathways forward.
Sandy, we have someone who indicated the 6th word, which is Academic Communication Center and All Literacy Lab, and AI Literacy Lab. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'll come check them out. I'm just going to wrap up here with my final thoughts. We're almost done, and then I'm excited to have the conversation. So just to further inspire our vision for the next 20 and next 10 years, I'd like to share my own thoughts, which echoing the closing reflections in the Library 2035. As I wrote in chapter 25, The Way Forward for Libraries, I said, the Library of 2035 will surely face its storms, threats, and crises. However, libraries and librarians who commit to innovation, stay ahead of emerging technologies, and strongly advocate their value will stand tall, strong and tall, with roots well grounded as an essential community resource for learning, communicating, playing, and working. And the Library of 2035 will rise to meet accelerating change, but only if we embrace our role as co-creators of that transformation. Through innovation, intentional leadership, and continuous learning, libraries can remain resilient, relevant, and revolutionary. So if you're interested in reading or hearing more about what the contributing authors envision for the future of libraries, you can take a look at the book that's available on Amazon or Rowman and Littlefield, and you can see the discount code there. But you might especially be interested in the accompanying 23 webcast interviews that I did with the authors that delved into their vision of the future. and the key opportunities, threats, and hopes for the future of libraries. And those webcasts are available for free, and they can be accessed on YouTube as I said, here's the QR code on the screen. And then just as I wrap up, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today about the future of libraries. I'm going to end by quoting the title of David Lenke's book chapter, which is, "There's no future of libraries, there are many." I believe that there are many possibilities for libraries in the future, and I am excited to have our conversation, to hear more about your thoughts about the future of libraries too. So thank you so much.